Thank you all for coming. My name is David Franks. I'm chairman of the board of Mass Citizens for Life. I'm very honored to serve in this position. My day job is professor of theology at St. John's Seminary and vice president of mission for the seminary's Theological Institute for the New Evangelization. I am so honored to be here with these pillars of the pro-life movement. And so many of you have been pillars from the beginning also. And today I've been asked to make a pitch, but it's going to be a fourfold pitch. It's going to be broad and it's going to narrow down to the money, but I'm going to put it in context here. As Jamie mentioned, just a few feet away from this historic place, you have the great chimneys, symbols of one of the most horrendous episodes of human history. And you look at the names, you look at the serial numbers: Treblinka, Sobibor, Auschwitz-Birkenau. And you remember, of course, why you are pro-life. Many of you have been fighting this for 40 years, more. And what we need to do is to recommit ourselves to the struggle, because, of course, it's only gotten tougher in some way with the election and so on. But when God the Father allows difficult things to happen, you know He's asking something from us. He's asking something, and that's what we have to pay attention to. Why did the election go the way it did? What's He asking? To be pro-life is something that has to go all the way down to every action of our daily lives. And that's what we have to see more clearly. We have to make this case because you know there are missing generations. I'm a member of a generation, Generation X, that isn't very well represented in the movement, not too well represented here. We have to get them back, and that's going to be part of my pitch. Because if we do not reestablish the nexus of the generations and the commitment to the cause of life, it will die. And then the hope for the powerless will die with the movement. So I make a pitch as chairman of the board that we pray, and seriously pray to the Father to give us the spirit of discernment in our own lives. What new initiatives? It doesn't matter how old or how young you are, no matter how old or how young you are, there is something great the Father is asking you to do. I guarantee it. In every single case, in every one of you. No question. I think you got a taste of that in the great campaign to defeat question 2, which was miraculous. And no small part of the miracle is what the Father did in raising up individual centers of initiative that you could not have planned out. You couldn't have micromanaged this thing. You couldn't organize this thing. The Spirit was working. And if you were near one of those dynamic centers, you feel something new again, or you feel something that you felt a long time ago. Let it work in you. We can convert this commonwealth. We can make it consistent with the ideals that were debated in this very hall. Ideals, the most basic ideals about the rights of man, about every single human life as being endowed, given by the Creator. Inalienable rights, the first of which is life. This was never in doubt when it was debated here. See, we have a lot to be proud of in Massachusetts, right? We help break the slave power, and we will help break the abortion power if you work. You saw, I hope many of you saw Lincoln, and I don't know about you, but I think you must have felt what I felt. That we've got to get out there again. Because here was the argument, and here's the whole rationale for Mass Citizens for Life, right? A passionate prudence. A passionate prudence, because that's what Lincoln, our great president, represents. Embodied, carried out. You remember the great dialogue with Thaddeus Stevens, the radical Republican. He says, you know where true north is. How do you get there? There are all kinds of mediations that have to be gone through. Well, that's where mass citizens for life is essential. And if we do not band together and organize political activity, we cannot get to true north. You cannot get there. We can have all the pro-life passion in the world, but without that, we will not succeed. Conversely, a lot of us have been in the movement a long time, and you deal with the prudence, and sometimes the passion doesn't seem as obvious anymore. And so we need to recover the passion. And that's what mass citizens represents here, is the nexus of passion and prudence. But we can't do that unless you are there with that nexus in your own hearts. Okay? So that's my first pitch, is a recommitment to the cause that drives us all, moves us so deeply, right? Because we hear, and here you're gonna get two things from my biography. I'm a professor of theology, so you're going to hear me preach. And I'm a former Baptist, so you're definitely going to hear me preach. King Jesus rides on. He rides on in the history of this world, down all the pathways, but he rides on above all in your hearts, and that's where we must let him reign. If he reigns there, he will reign everywhere. That is how the kingdom comes. When he says, today this is fulfilled in your hearing, it is fulfilled when you hear him. It is fulfilled when you hear him. When the word of the Father is spoken, when he is spoken, when Jesus Christ, who is that word, is spoken into our existence, he doesn't mean to be spoken in some anodyne way. He means to be spoken into the darkness of our hopeless struggles. And we will receive him there, and if we receive him there, the hopelessness will be exploded from the inside, because he is the God of glory. The God of glory, ladies and gentlemen, and he will overcome, because he has overcome. He has overcome. King Jesus, ride on down the pathways of our hearts. We've seen very horrible things, and that's why you take that beatitude, right? Blessed are they who mourn. It is one of the most paradoxical of the Beatitudes. Jesus is telling us you can't be happy unless you mourn. Why is that? Because he knows the world is filled with brutality, and if you do not have a heart for the victims of history, you do not have a heart, and if you do not have a heart, you cannot be happy. Blessed are they who mourn. And we remember. We are the people of memory. We remember. And that remembrance is not merely a notional thing. It is, as St. Augustine always tried to tell us, memory is a matter of being present to. We are present to the victims. And that's why we cannot rest. We cannot rest until the victims are liberated. As once our soldiers rolled into those camps and set the survivors free, there are millions of hearts in darkness waiting for us to roll in under the banner of Jesus Christ. Now, here I have to make a qualification. You know, Mass Citizens is not a sectarian organization, so I say some of these things under the aspect of my own biography, right? And in the movement, you know, we have to be able to make the natural law case about this basic embryology, that this is a human life at conception, and that what you do with human life, you don't kill the most powerless human life, that the preferential option for the poor is just good common sense. The most powerless human life requires more of our responsibility, not less. So we make that case, and we're very comfortable as pro-lifers making it. But I have learned, as the years go on, of course, the ones who've stuck in the movement tend to be Christian, right? And so apologies to those who aren't. Thank God you're here, because we need everybody. And the whole point of having a non-sectarian organization is to build the largest possible coalition to defeat this most vicious of actions that our nation indulges in. So we make the natural law arguments, but in the end, if we're going to actually make the case to new generations about the pro-life issue, we're going to have to say something. If you are a believer, you're going to have to evangelize with this. Because the bigger context for what we do is simply that we know that love wins because the Father loves every single one of us, and He is the reason any human being exists at all. He is it. So why is it that we have this paradox? That we have a majority of people self-identifying as pro-life, right? Which is a beautiful thing. And yet, majority support for Roe v. Wade is still holding steady. How do we get into this paradox? How do we unravel it? Well, part of it is that people don't know what Roe v. Wade is, and that's part of this recommitment, right? To understanding how radical that it gives the abortion franchise when combined with Doe versus Bolton, right? With that capacious health exception, it gives the abortion right practically throughout all of pregnancy. And people don't understand that because the media doesn't understand that. So we need to just say it. We need to say things that you all take for granted because you've grown up with these facts, right? But there's a whole world out there that doesn't know the facts. So we do need to get back to the facts. But here's the second part of my pitch. And this is something Cardinal Sean, in a very, very beautiful homily that he gave at the Basilica on the eve of the March, he cited Blessed John Paul, and talking about how faith has to become culture, or else it isn't faith at all. It has to become enfleshed in the very rhythms of everyday life. And how does that happen? What I've been telling my students in various fora is a 3-stage process, and I would just ask for you to pray about these. Number 1 is to receive the sacraments, because sacramental grace is how you have grace operate on you, as opposed to setting God's plans within the context of your own plans. And that's the fundamental battle we're facing in the culture of death, right? Is who controls? Who's king? Who gets to determine the course of my life? Do I choose the course of my life, or is it a gift to me? That is the fundamental thing. You see it as a gift, everybody else sees it as a choice that we somehow build up from scratch. And that mythology is going to kill us if we let it into our homes and into our hearts and give it quarter at all. Because it is the most basic way we are against the kingdom. Because the kingdom means, thy will be done, not mine. The second step is very important, but here it is me as a professor. Contemplation in various ways. Many of you who have been around in the movement the longest, it's not an accident that you have been schooled in certain liberal arts that have in many ways passed from this world. And I would ask all of us to recommit ourselves to this and look at the proportions in this room. This is the aesthetics of civic virtue. And I'm not being nostalgic, but my point being, we have to remember there is a thing called virtue, and there is a thing called learning. And that if we do not preserve the most beautiful things on earth, they will pass away. And with it, that darkness, that barbarism that comes to swamp all of those beautiful things is precisely the barbarism that comes and kills the powerless when they are inconvenient. It is the same barbarism. And there is one only antidote to this. And that is to embrace contemplation in prayer and in study. And it doesn't matter, again, you're never too young or never too old. And I've got some programs for you if you're interested. And finally, practices of self-denial are very important in a culture of consumerism, because the consumerist ideology that self-gratification is the most important good is fueling the culture of death. And if in our own lives we're not able to deny ourselves, not because we like denial, but because we need to be strong enough to undertake the burdens that true love imposes upon us. How do you liberate the camps? You become a soldier for Christ. And how do you become a soldier for Christ? It means sometimes giving things up so that you are free enough to run. In the field, there stand the standards, and they flutter in the breeze. And King Jesus, he stands there and asks, will you come to me? Will you follow me? And we need to be trained if we would do that. So that's the second pitch, is that there is in the very fabric of our lives, always more we can do to become more faithful followers of the Lord of life. And that becomes very practical when you think, why is it that young women, girls and women still get abortion even if people more and more recoil from the reality? It's because they've got a sense of what their life should be like, and they don't feel as if they have another choice. That social script that tells young women that a child is a block to human fulfillment, if we do not interrupt that social script and give an alternative script, we will not overcome abortion. We have to give them another script, and the best way to give it is by living out a life that is really countercultural, that's really different. Where your home is filled with light, where it's filled with learning, where it's filled with appreciation of the beautiful, where it is civilized and not barbaric, where it is an island of sanity in a nation going insane. Right? Sandy Hook didn't happen over there. We all the media likes to say that's something there, and we can fix it with some kind of technocratic solution, when in fact, Sandy Hook is something that is bred in every single human heart, in a culture that is sick, that we must fix. But it has to be fixed in our hearts first, because that culture isn't out there, it is in our hearts. And we have to let the grace of God work in every little thing. So the third pitch is very specific to Mass Citizens for Life. What I want to see is my own generation, Generation X. If any of you who are of that generation here, please think about who you know who does have a heart for this but did not know that there is this organization. Bring them in. And of course, young adults, bring them in. Whatever generation you are, you know of people in your community who have a heart for this. You recognize them because this is who you are. And you say, I've seen that spark before. You have a heart for the victim. Let me tell you about what you can do. And what that requires is we need to build chapters again in every community throughout this Commonwealth. And when we do that, we will be able to convert the legislature into a pro-life body, and we will have, again, Massachusetts leading this whole nation in the cause for freedom. That is what we can do. It is not a mere dream. It is a dream that has been put into your hearts by the Lord Jesus, and therefore it is real. Feel the springtime in your hearts. It is there. It is there to blossom. So any of you, of course, who are not members, please join. And then think about all of those others who you know are pro-life, and the others that you can make the case for. This is the time to start organizing again. And that leads to the fourth part, which is money. Mass Citizens is, just like most other civic groups, ever since the early 90s, has been suffering a decline in membership, and that's why I'm making these appeals. That also means a decline in contributions, and it leaves us in difficult condition. So, Please pray right now for the Spirit to give you a sense of what you're able to give in support of the organization. If any of the things I've said resonate in your heart, please use that to further your discernment, and know above all, as long as we're together, and as long as we're committed in a way that we're able to sacrifice for this, the greatest of all social justice causes that has ever arisen in the history of the world, right? It is a horrible thing that we fight But what a glorious thing to be in this movement. You hear about Wilberforce and you say, I wish I could be like Wilberforce. You look at Lincoln, you say, I wish I could be like Lincoln. You can be Wilberforce and you can be Lincoln. Now, in an even greater cause. So please, as we have music, please prayerfully consider what you can contribute to the organization as I think baskets will be handed around. Thank you very much.